Welcome to the Conscious Science Podcast, where we explore the intersection of consciousness and scientific inquiry, focusing on the profound effects of cannabis and other psychedelic plants. In this episode, we are going to talk about mental health and cannabis. This is Ali from New Zealand. Hi, Shabnam.
Hi.
All right, this is our third episode of the Conscious Science Podcast, and we're going to talk about mental health disorders, about social anxiety disorders, depression, PTSD, and the role of cannabis in treating these conditions, and basically talking about the highs and the lows, because we know that with any substance, the benefits as well as risks and side effects. So with that, Shabnam, I invite you to say a few words to start this journey together.
Yeah, Ali, thank you so much again for initiating and doing this podcast. I'm super happy, and today we want to talk about mental health, which is I don't know, which is such an important such an important topic, especially in our modern society. We know that the depression rate and suicide rate are increasing, and I think we should talk about it, raise awareness about what are mental health issues, and how we can help regulate our mental health with plants and other basically exercises. If that is okay, I want to start our discussion today with a poem from Rumi in Persian, which the poem says, از یک اندیشه که آید در درون، صد جهان گردد به یک دم سرنگون. So this poem actually has the same meaning as Stoic teachings and Seneca's teaching, that we always suffer more in our imagination than reality. And I think this is the absolute the golden rule of general mental health and psychotherapy. I would suggest that we
Absolutely.
go. Yeah. If you want, we can go through some.
Absolutely. Just
Tell me.
on that, Shabnam, as you said, I think, at least for me, one of the number one things that keeps my mind engaged is mental health, because a lot of us have experienced stress at work, toxic workplace relationships, pressures from various members of society or whatever you are interacting with, and I think after COVID, things changed quite quickly. The rate of I think two things happen. People have started to talk more openly about mental health disorders, about their mental health, but also I think during the COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty, fear. People were forced to do things that they didn't want to do, and their working condition changed. They were separated from the families, so financially, a lot of people struggle. I remember at the university, like in previous years, maybe every couple of semester, one or two students would apply for an extension based on a mental health issue. And after COVID, every semester, 10, 15 applications in one of my papers, So our younger generation, especially, I think, suffered a lot during and post-COVID. And so this is something that is going to continue for some time, and I think it is quite important to address and to kind of be open-minded to new therapeutic possibilities, to new drugs such as cannabis or other plant medicines that can be useful, because especially in youth we know that the classic antidepressants, SSRIs, they simply don't work. There's a lot of clinical evidence that shows that there's no long-term benefit of taking SSRI, especially in youth depression.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very dear topic. And yes, you were saying about the structure of the podcast today.
Yeah, so I mean, what you said about the prevalence of depression and anxiety or mental health issues, I mean, the statistic that I want to say is WHO, a statistic for 2090, which in 2090 they said that 1 in 8 person suffer from kind of a mental illness. 1 in 8% is too much. And after COVID, they said that the numbers in anxiety and depression increased to 26 or 28%. So you see that it's get a kind of pandemic, mental health issue pandemic, and we should do something about it because it's not affecting only adults but also younger generation. I mean, we see that the suicidal rate is increasing among young girls, and more like teenagers are struggling with mental health issues, which is like super sad. Basically, this young generation are the future of planet Earth, and we should be more careful. I mean, I don't know what's going on. If you think about it, we are living in a much better condition in comparison to 500 years ago. All of us have like access to water, warm water, basic hygiene. We are not starving. And I'm telling that about the Western societies. And despite all of these stuff that we have, mental health problems are increasing. I have no answer for that. I don't know why. I don't know where that problem lies, but it's something that should be, we have to find the root cause of the problem.
I'm sure, Shabnam, if we had some data that compared the rate of suicide in the Western society or in the industrialized, the wealthier nations versus more traditional nations, I think there'd be a major difference. Because, one of the things that I really it clicks for me is, yes, depression is a disorder, but it's a modern day disorder. I think that our whole system, we've used a lot of science to kind of develop our technology and industry. But if you look at the bigger picture and compare to maybe 3,000, 4,000 years ago in those great civilizations, our technological advancement has been mostly on superficial things, things that make our lives more comfortable. We like to having technology, mobile phone, cars, travel faster for convenience, whereas our spiritual technology hasn't really advanced at all. So we are in a very three-dimensional kind of reality here in this world, where spirituality has been neglected. And of course, in the past 2,000 years, some of the religions or the religious people also have taken advantage of spirituality, and so people have naturally gone away from it. And I think that disconnect with your higher self, with your inner self, is to me, that is the number one cause for depression and mental health issues. if you look at the various sources of data, they talk about social media being the number one cause of suicide and depression. And yes, that may be a tool that has been um, um, you know contributing to that, but because on social media, people look at other people, they see their own happiness in other people's lives, and of
Right.
course you feel down, and if you're looking at it every 5 minutes, then of course that's going to cause. But I think for me, that disconnection, not knowing who you are and why you are here and why you came here,
Exactly.
that is for me the cause of the disturbances that we see in world. And if you go to poorer countries, ancient traditional tribal societies, you will see that quickly disappears. That people are much more aware of themselves. They can relate to their emotions. They don't hide their emotions. They can go talk to the elders, to the shamans, and they have really good support system. Family and society support system to get them through those issues. So in terms of stats, yeah, what is happening around the world?
So yeah, and first of all, you put it like beautifully. I think what we are missing is first of all the connection to ourselves and the connection, like the collective connection that we have all together. That support system is missing, and
Mm.
that's why it's so hard on our soul. So yeah, in terms of statistics, 1 in 8 person all around the world are suffering from kind of a mental health disorder. And we have like mental health disorder, we have different names for that, but to be honest, it's a huge spectrum. Okay, we have anxiety, depression, PTSD, anorexia nervosa, or bulimia nervosa. All of those are basically in a spectrum of mental health diseases, but you cannot really separate them. For example, you cannot tell that this person has only depression but no anxiety or not something else. When you develop some kind of mental health disease, it's always a combination of all of those. It's a very simplistic approach to try to label different kind of symptoms, and we say, okay, that is depression or that is PTSD. They are very, very much intertwined, and we see that in most of the patients, they come together. For example, if they have PTSD, they also have depression, they cannot sleep well, most probably they have problem with eating, they have problem with their sexual life. So it's like a combination of everything. But just to like give a little bit more like this labeled statistic, for example, PTSD, the new statistic is that 3.6% of the world population are suffering from PTSD. And for eating disorder, this statistic for 2019, that's 14 million people are basically are experiencing eating disorders, which 3 million of them are teenagers. And that's like, again, like you mentioned, social media, and this anorexia, that you always have the feeling that you are not beautiful enough, or your body is not thin, or is not thin enough, your shape is not good. So all of these are just like putting oil to the fire of mental health diseases. And yeah, apart from that, we also have to basically acknowledge the fact that women are more susceptible to mental health diseases. The prevalence of depression and anxiety in women are 2 times more than men, but men are 4 times more susceptible to make suicide. So
Do so.
there are, yeah, exactly. So, and I think it's because men usually don't want to talk about their problems, if they feel depressed or whatever, and they want to like basically try to solve everything by themselves, and that was then suddenly the pressure come too high. Women are more open if they have some kind of a problem to open up to their friends and talk with them. So yeah, that's basically the where the statistics are. And I have to say that we as a culture, as like a species, we can do much better.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think another thing that I want to put out there is classification of these conditions as diseases. I think about 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, talking about depression was a big taboo. Like, you wouldn't go and talk to your line manager or to your boss or teacher about your stress levels or depression or pressures that you feel at work. And I think overall in the developed world we did a great job by talking about the issue. And in university we've had so many workshops around supporting staff and students. And so you've got a mental health day. We now have even we have a special category of leaves, which are
Yeah.
related to mental health. Students are supported through their crisis. But I think in terms of therapy, I'm going to put it out there. It's not just as a question, but I feel like classifying these conditions as diseases have been good in that. Okay, we've overcome the the social issues around it. But in terms of therapy, when we look at something as a disease, the usual thing is, the normal thing for a GP or a practitioner is to prescribe something to cure it, or to take the symptoms away. That's where I've got a little bit of problem with it, and I'm gonna put it out there.
Right.
Because I think working around mental health disorders, and I keep saying disorders because I really don't like that term disease, is that requires a much more holistic approach. With one antidepressant tablet or cannabis or other medications, nobody can guarantee that you're gonna cure somebody. It has to be through changes in lifestyle, spiritual growth, learning techniques to cope and elevate yourself, and through that hopefully people can get back to their higher self.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. They are
And
not. Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, you're completely right about disease. Maybe they are not diseases, but they are diseases, and definitely you need a holistic approach to address that, because, like, everything come, like, we are what we think. I mean, our whole thinking system should change. It's not that you get some external pill or herb or drink or magic potion and suddenly you're gonna change inside out. That's not gonna happen. As you said, we need a holistic approach to the mental health, which start from like learning spiritual practices, changing lifestyle, and even changing our diet. Now they understood that many of the mental health diseases have a direct connection with inflammation in our body. So there was one clinical study, Ali, you cannot believe this, that shows curcumin, the active compound in turmeric or zarchube, is as effective as escitalopram to address depression. Like, I was, oh my God, that's like it. And it's all of these small nuances that if we put it on the category of disease is something that have symptoms, and I give you something to basically cover that symptoms, but I don't care about the root causes. I love what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it's about empowering people to be able to turn this around, basically. With PTSD, for example, you will find that a lot of people who have suddenly had a massive spiritual growth have had a major trauma in their life, and later on they view that trauma as a blessing, as a window to that have enabled them to explore their inner wisdom. So yeah, if you are suffering, if you think the world is gonna end, if you think all the doors are closed, this might be momentarily. uh, as we've learned, this shall also pass.
Indeed, what.
And look at it, yeah, look at it as an opportunity. Seek help, talk to your friend, reach out, um, and ask for alternative modes of therapy. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of people who have dedicated their lives to help people. So don't feel you're stuck. Talk to people and listen to the whispers in your ears. We always get these intuitions that tell us, hey, it's gonna be all right, but we don't listen to it. Yes, it's about empowering ourselves. It's about empowering our youth, and the stats might show that we are doing worse, Shabnam. But sometimes you get surprised. I meet a lot of bright-minded young people in the university, and they just blow my mind. Like, they gave me so much hope. They give me so much hope. And it's just a few days ago, this young lady I met, who was studying veterinary science in New Zealand. She was from South America. Beautiful name. Her name was Aya. Confident, a beautiful being. And we had such an amazing conversation about the philosophy of existence, world medicine, pets, vets. Oh my God. And only 19 years old. And when I asked her age, I just couldn't believe she was so young. And I said to her, it's taken me 40 years to kind of be at peace with the whole philosophy of existence,
Right.
and understand and relate to the nature, to the world. And you're 18 and you get it. You've got a bright future ahead of you. So when I see people like that, yeah, it's just very very joyful to see that. Yes, the stats might show that some of us are not doing well, but a lot of them have actually taken the advantage of this information and technology age, and they are truly empowering themselves.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we had the discussion that, yeah, okay, most of the time when we talk about the statistics, we look at the trends, but we don't look at the absolute numbers. It's like important how to like interpret the statistics. I mean, and it's like a science for itself in the age that we are living now. everything is misused, even numbers, even statistics, to like either frighten us or demotivate us or motivate us or whatever. So it's super important that it's hard, it takes a lot of time, but I think it's a responsibility for all of us not to, as you said, not to just believe the statistics that we see somewhere, really dig one level deeper to see, okay, here is the trend. Of course, I have to be careful. Of course, there are many people who are suffering, but also don't forget about the positive side. And as you said, this amazing young generation that are the hope of our future.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So what next, Shabnam? Should we talk about the role of the endocannabinoid system in depression?
Yes. I mean, actually, in our last episode, we talked like a little bit about what endocannabinoid system is and what kind of role it has in our body, and basically it regulates everything in our body. So there is no surprise that endocannabinoids also plays a modulatory and a very crucial role in regulating anxiety and stress in our body. Now studies are showing that being exposed to trauma, especially childhood trauma, or being in a depressed situation for a long time, actually change our endocannabinoid tone. The expression of CB1 receptors downregulate, and also the presence of 2-AG, which is an endocannabinoid ligand, that the level of 2-AG would be much higher in our blood if we are like exposed to a stress and anxiety for a long time. So now they can also use endocannabinoids as a marker.
So the number of
yeah.
So the number of receptors going down,
Yes.
but the level of endocannabinoids going up.
The level of 2-AG goes up. The level of 2-AG goes up, and it's so interesting that when we talk about a short episode of a stress, like suddenly there is a fire out there, I have to do something immediately. Okay, let's take this extreme example. What happened in my body is that I see that the level of 2-AG goes up, and when the level of 2-AG goes up, it's basically down-regulate my anandamide, because at that moment I cannot feel good. So my anandamide level comes down, my cortisol goes up. It's like all a feedback loop. My cortisol goes up, 2-AG goes up, because 2-AG is like basically a trigger for cortisol. And then in the moment I have to decide, okay, how I want to react to this situation. And after that, again, the high level of cortisol is a feedback loop for anandamide to come high again and make me calm. So you see, it's a beautiful like balance and like positive, negative feedback with like hormones and endocannabinoid system. And basically the endocannabinoid system also set the tone for our HPA axis. So they regulate the connection between our endocrine system and our brain in a very, very interesting way. And that's why like being exposed to anxiety or trauma for a long time change the tonality of the endocannabinoid system in our body, the ligands, the enzymes, and also the expression of receptors.
Right. So then how does in your opinion, or from what you've read, how does introduction of external cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids, how can that help depression?
So, Ali, I think you're gonna agree with me on that front, that unfortunately the randomized controlled trials are not, how do you call it, are not basically strong enough. You know, there are lots of anecdotes and
Mm.
like surveys out there, observational studies on a certain population that they say cannabis helped them. But then you have also randomized controlled trials that say, oh no, in some group, even the level of anxiety increased, or actually cannabis doesn't help them. And the problem with that is when we talk about cannabis, cannabis is not like escitalopram, is not one molecule with a certain dosage. When you look at the studies,
Yeah.
and they talk about like cannabis consume, you don't know what kind of chemovar have been used, how much have been used, what was the like way of consumption, was it eatable, was it like inhale. So because of that, like there is not a certain yes and no for that. And I think because our endocannabinoid system is so individual and varies person to
Mm.
person, cannabis as a
Yeah.
medicine is also a personalized medicine, and its effect and the dosage and the best application form also varies dosage to person to person.
Yes, and it looks like, from the literature at least, we've got a lot of anecdotal evidence, stories from patients. I've seen a lot of people. Cannabis has helped them immensely with the depression. I think from what I've seen, not so much from the clinical studies, but from talking to people. Uh, One of the challenges with depression is lack of sleep. Like, you
Right.
know, you go home, and this happens a lot with people who have functional depression. People who go to work, who have high outputs, they have a family life, but they're also depressed, but they just don't have time to process it. So they're functional, they go to work, they come back home, and then they struggle to sleep.
Right.
um, and it helps those people because we know that cannabis can relax you, especially at night if you take high CBD, CBD dominant strains or preparations that have more CBD in them. You get a better body high, relaxation, and it helps them to sleep. And I think that on its own is something worth considering. If people are having depression combined with lack of sleep. And
Exactly.
if you look at the clinical data, it's really mixed results. I think, if I'm doing a research, I wouldn't look to anything prior to 2020. In fact, um, 2018 maybe would be the last data I would look for, because prior to that, everything was just about the harms of cannabis. So the
Exactly.
studies were heavily biased. There was no mention of the dose, the strain, um, condition of the patients, the pre-existing conditions, other comorbidities, nothing, and a small sample size, as you mentioned. There's been quite a few interesting studying recently, and I think um, one of the interesting points about cannabis in depression is that some studies suggest that cannabis can lead to depression,
Right.
but there are also studies that say that um, depression leads to increased use of cannabis in people who already use it. Yeah, um,
Yeah.
and and that's quite interesting. Your endocannabinoid system is telling you need more cannabinoids. Um, but also, again, this is another point of bias, because are we talking about people who are already using cannabis, you
Right.
know, regularly, or not, or occasionally, or are these people who've never had cannabis before. In ancient Egypt, the way they used to work with medicines, and different schools of spirituality, it was quite interesting. They used to have a house or a temple dedicated for cannabis. They had another one maybe for mushrooms, or different types of spiritual practices. And people, the youth, they used to go into these places and spend like an internship. Like, you go into this temple and you will be introduced, inducted into cannabis rituals. You will learn about the effects of the medicine,
Right.
and you will also be taught how to interpret the effects, how to use it for your spiritual advancement. How does it show you your limitations? So they used to get the whole picture around that plan. So yeah, the studies that we deal with today certainly don't have that holistic view. And again, even after 2018, I think most of the clinical studies that are coming out was after the legalization in Canada. But even in those studies, we are seeing very similar bias. So, the dose is not really defined. A lot of the data is anecdotal data, or patient, questionnaire. The strain of cannabis is almost universally ignored. Like, nobody's talking about what strain, what are the terpenes. We know nothing about the terpenes. We've just slowly discovering the role of the terpenes. So things like limonene, is antidepressant on its own. So how does that affect the body when it is consumed along with the other cannabinoids? We don't know about the other constituents that patients have taken. Was it only THC? Did it have CBD, CBG, CBN? Nothing about that. The history of use is unclear, whether or not the regular users or frequent users. No information. And the pre-existing conditions are not really declared. And as you said, sample sizes are too small. So, in a nutshell, it's very difficult to conclude anything based on scientific evidence. It's hard to say whether it's good or bad. And I think, it is telling us something. It is telling us that it's not a magic drug for depression and mental health issue. It's not like you get somebody cannabis and it's going to cure them. I think cannabis can be a teacher. I think, going back to our first episode, it can be a medicine. It can be an ally, to help you through that journey. That's how I kind of conclude at the moment. Of course, with Parkinson's and other neurodegenerative disorders, I think the body of knowledge is slowly growing around the neuroprotective effects, and so it'll be interesting if there would be a link between the two, and also long-term studies, post legalization. A lot of people are talking about the rate of depression going up post legalization in America. However, again, there's been so many changes in the world. We've had COVID. We now have a financial recession. These are all the contributing factors. Maybe as well as cannabis, but who knows?
Who knows? No. I think one of the main reason that we have like different kind of outcomes from cannabis studies when it's come to depression is that, first of all, most of the observational studies are on the cannabis users, and normally cannabis users, they access to the cannabis chemovars in which they are high in THC, okay? And the THC has this biphasic or U-shape effect. In low concentration, it could help with anxiety and sleep, but in higher concentration, it's gonna, in some cases, you even get serotonin, basically syndrome. You get panic, you get anxiety, and that's, you have to imagine, like we have endocannabinoid receptor in hypothalamus, hippocampus, amygdala, which are basically the three major hubs in our brain to regulate our activities, to regulate our emotions. And of course, if I put too much stress on my amygdala, if I put too much stress on my hypothalamus, of course my body gonna react to that. So I think what we can basically conclude from all of those studies is that, yeah, if you want to introduce cannabis to your basically herbal medicine toolbox to address your anxiety and depression, please start with very low THC concentrations. Like I think 0.5 milligram THC would be like enough. But what is like very promising when it comes to anxiety, and we have good evidence-based studies on that, is the usage of CBD. Because CBD doesn't have that like a strong effect of THC, and there are good clinical studies that shows like healthy individuals and the people with social anxiety disorder, they benefit a lot from using CBD, and even they could conclude that the most effective dose of CBD is 300 milligram. So it's super important that we understand, yeah, okay, not you cannot compare three different cannabis chemovars. They can have absolutely different effects on your body, and they can have absolutely different effect on your body than my body. So that's again, cannabis is an amazing plant, but we also have an amazing endocannabinoid system, and that should be personalized. And again, circle back to like another phyto chemicals in cannabis, terpenes one of them. We know that from like ancient time aromatherapy, that lavender with the terpene linalool is like a calming aroma, because it's just directly bound to our GABA receptor, and it's like calm us down. All of these stuffs play a role together, and I think that's the main reason why we cannot. There's no surprise that why we don't have any. Why we have this all mixed result in clinical studies. It's so complicated, so many variants. How are we going to like uh, uh, eliminate all of these variants and make a good conclusion? It's kind of like it's need a huge investment and a huge like randomized control trial.
Do you get terpene sodas in Germany?
Yes. I mean, terpenes is good. Terpene, we can sell that under flavor or whatever. But what I really love about like this terpene science, there are some good companies out there in Israel and US that they are doing these terpene blends. So basically, like there is one product, it's only beta caryophyllene. It's just a terpene from black pepper, and it do amazing
Yeah.
for depression. And it's just the terpene from cannabis or black pepper, beta caryophyllene. It's like, yeah, absolute amazing, a
Yeah.
wonder of nature.
And that also, opens possibility for people who may not be ready to take THC, who don't who don't have any appetite for that side of cannabis, start with terpene, with a terpene drink or this blends. If you're in Europe or in Canada, you've got a lot more options. But even in New Zealand, we've got a couple of, terpene sodas with a really good mixture of cannabinoids, very calming and relaxing available. I'm sure you can go on Google and find those two brands. And, CBD is another option. It's not psychoactive. It doesn't have side effects. It's a medicine that is very well tolerated. In New Zealand, it's a pharmacist-only medicine. In other parts of the world, it's over the counter. It's actually a food ingredient in many states in America. So pretty safe to use, very, very good therapeutic profile. And while a lot of people, feel like THC is the main medicine, there's also a lot of people who benefit from CBD.
Right.
So, if you fall into that category, if you're hesitant to take THC, go for CBD. It's not gonna impair your cognitive function or your physical mobility. It's absolutely non-psychoactive. The only thing is, if you have too much of it, you're just gonna be too relaxed. The body high can. I don't know whether it can be overwhelming or not, but yeah.
No. And yeah, even if you don't want to try any kind of cannabinoids, we discussed about that there are cannabimimetic options. For example, truffles are found to be full of anandamides. You can take truffles, omega-3 fatty acids. They are the building blocks of our endocannabinoid ligands in our body. And like everyone knows about like doing yoga, meditation, exercises, but even like exposure to heat, like a warm bath make your anandamide level come high. So there are lots of like natural options besides using cannabis to elevate and boost your endocannabinoid
This
system.
truffles are expensive commodity in New Zealand. Are they
Are they?
widely available in Europe?
They are, and they are not.
And how
Yeah.
do you use it?
So there are different options. So here you can get like truffles in butter or I don't know, cheese or whatever. There are different kind of food stuffs with that. But you can also just buy truffles as the as truffle as the root that they are, and then you can just put it on your dish. This is like super delicious.
Isn't it a kind of mushroom?
It is actually. Truffles are the,
Truffles?
how do you call it, the
Yeah, it's
lower
a fungus.
body of the mushroom. It's under the ground. Basically, like when we see a mushroom is a fruit, and what is underneath it is like it's like kind of roots or reason we call
Like a
it like
message.
this. Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yes, there's so many other plants that can be used along with cannabis to kind of take care of some of the side effects of cannabis, and also a lot of other plant medicines that have huge potential in the treatment of depression. We have a condition called drug-resistant depression. These are people who have basically tried every drug and they're not responding to any antidepressant. There are now clinical studies happening in Canada, in the UK. So people are trying psilocybin, ayahuasca. I haven't really seen clinical studies on it, but a lot of people go into Amazon, into Peru, Brazil to do ayahuasca, and these are just another category of medicines that can help people who are struggling with the mental health, more so for people who are seriously struggling. And I think the case of cannabis in mental health is a really exaggerated case. However you want to look at it, if you're a pro cannabis person, I mean, like, logically we shouldn't be pro or against anything. We should be able to freely weigh in advantages and disadvantages and make a decision. But the way cannabis has been prohibited for many many years, and that even the legalization in a lot of countries like New Zealand has been like a thirsty person who hasn't had water for 6 days, and you're just giving them drops of water one by one. We've limited the potential of the plant, and by that I mean, like, in New Zealand the regulations are so tight that it is virtually impossible to put the natural terpenes from cannabis into the formula. So, because the reason is there is no monograms on some of them on the pharmacopoeia. So, the synthetic variants can be added, but the natural ones cannot be. Or the microbial limit is so low that there is no dry flower, grown in New Zealand still in the market. Such, but I kind of feel like, especially in New Zealand, our politicians wanted to say, okay, yes, we've legalized it for you, but then at the same time, they made it so tight that it's a non-functional industry. And then along with that, we've had, thousands of years of oppression of indigenous knowledge. And in South America, for example, now we are rediscovering ayahuasca, which has been practiced there for thousands of years, or the mushrooms. And so, so that's what I mean. From whatever angle you look at it, it's an exaggerated story. I work with cannabis. I think it's an amazing plant. If you look at the Hindu religious texts, it's one of the 5 sacred plants on the earth. If you go to Persia, to Egypt, you find a lot of evidence for that as well. But it's not answer to every disease and problem. Yeah, I don't think cannabis cures depression. It's an ally. And look, if I was prescribing, or if I advising a patient, and there wasn't all these rules around us, I would say, right, you've got a depression. Okay, so we're gonna do some meditation, talk therapy. Okay, not getting better. Let's try these medicines, terpenes, other plant medicines. Right, we're not getting answer. Okay, so if in the case of person who has a drug-resistant depression, let's try mushrooms. Let's try psilocybin, and not synthetic versions as they're trialing in the UK and other parts of the world. In fact, there was a paper that came out that said that there is significant differences between the natural form of psilocybin and the synthetic form, and they concluded that, especially for depression, the natural molecule seems to have a better long effect, than the synthetic versions. So if I was working with a patient like that, 2 breakthrough doses of psilocybin and then microdose for 3 months. A lot of people have one psilocybin session, the depression is gone. I think For depression, for mental health disorders, we've got better drugs, better medicines, but the system is like in New Zealand. Psilocybin is class A drug. It's put next to heroin or cocaine, whereas it's one of the safest recreational drugs man has ever known. And similarly with ayahuasca, I think the things that I've read and the experience that I've had with the medicine, it's one of the most incredible plant medicines out there. And the problem is that the experience, the psychedelic experience associated with these medicines is not measurable. It's not controllable. Every person's experience is going to be different. But overall, you'll see that people come to very similar conclusions. And that is the point that I was making earlier. It's, getting back to your inner self, reestablishing that connection between you, the nature, the existence, the people around you. People have very positive experience, and they walk away with that empowered feeling, and that effect seems to last for a long period of time after these interventions too. And I think as the number of suicide rates are increasing, it was just a couple of months ago, where I work, there's hostel, and they were doing some construction work, and as I drive, I see this young boy climbing up of the building, and I thought, oh, it's just a stupid young boy, just climbing up the scaffoldings. And then I went to the city and came back, all police and ambulance, and then we came to know that no, he's gone up and committed suicide. It happens everywhere. Everybody knows a person or have heard of a person near them who've had suicide. So as these problems start to increase in rate and exaggerate, our need for these natural medicines, plant-based medicines, are going to be, more important than ever before in the history of the mankind. And currently, the people who are sworn to promise to look after us are the same people who are blocking access, and that needs to change. Sorry, I went a bit,
No, we should talk about
I get very emotional with these issues. Sorry.
No. I mean, they are very, very important topics, and we have to shed light on them. We have to talk about them, because without sharing our personal stories, no major cultural shift will happen. The stories that we tell each other and tell others about any subject, that those stories are the building block of the cultural shift. So it's super important to talk about them.
Yeah, and it gets more difficult when you work with people, especially in where I am, in a university, you work with cannabis. I get a lot of inquiries. A lot of people come talk to me. I also collaborate with herbalists and a herbal medicine store in the town. So I'm in touch with the community. Yeah, and the thing is, when you know about something, when you know the facts, and then you see, things happen exactly opposite, that doesn't make sense, just becomes very frustrating.
I know.
But yeah, I think it's important. They've always told us if you're not gonna get anything if you don't ask. So
Exactly.
we are asking for it. On anxiety, you said that CBD strains help a lot. I also read somewhere about depression. Where is it? Here. That in a patient-centered study, a retrospective study, they found that it's very interesting. Both indica dominant and sativa dominant strains helped people with depression quite a lot. People were using mostly oil and dry herb for depression, and the isolates. Nobody said that THC alone or CBD alone helps me. It was indica dominant or sativa dominant. So I found that quite interesting. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that, because usually sativa and indica have such different activities, but people
Yeah,
are finding both of them useful for depression.
I think it's again come back to the point that yeah, okay, we have different tonality of endocannabinoid system, and for example, maybe my tolerance for CBD be higher than your tolerance, so I find a little bit of I can so sorry, the tolerance of THC, so I can find some chemovars with higher THC more functional for me than with lower, and or vice versa. So because yeah, again, these cannabinoids really affect almost all part of our brain, from prefrontal cortex to insula to amygdala, and to find what would be the best combination of these two, it would be individual. So no wonder that many people find it useful and many people find it like either worsening their symptom or they see no improvement.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's the effects, yeah, from patient to patient and from cultivar to cultivar. It's a very complex
Yes.
thing with cannabis always, right? And that's the thing. Again, that's another bias that goes into the studies. I think a, a big deal of personalization, trial and error need to go into the practice. Every person needs to find the dose and their strain and experiment with it slowly.
Exactly.
Start with very small doses, and then eventually, hopefully, yeah. I think in countries like New Zealand, unfortunately, that's not very practical, because we don't really have access to variety of different cultivars.
Yeah.
I mean, every bag of weed on the street in New Zealand, is probably from the same genetics. White widow is a very common
Right.
genetic in New Zealand.
Yeah. Yes.
And then there's some, super hazy, lemon haze. Is it lemon haze? Yeah. Um, and the crossovers, but yeah, there's nothing specific as you would see in other countries. Next month, I'm going to Thailand to visit a medical university, and then have a tour of the cannabis industry over there, and they're doing some really amazing clinical studies in Thailand, much easier in terms of cost and ethic approval. So I'm really looking forward to go and learn more on how to do it, but also, be able to see and experience all these different cultivars and their effects and what so on. Yeah,
So if you're going to Thailand, you should definitely try kratom over there. It's also an amazing, amazing herb, such a good antidepressant. And actually, it's legal there. You can just get the powder or get it as a herb in tea or like different, yeah, the different application forms. And it's like, yeah, again, it's native to Thailand and it's, yeah, amazing, amazing plant with super,
Okay.
super
How,
calm, beautiful
how do
effect.
you spell it? How do
Keratom,
you spell it?
it's, can I write it here for you somewhere? And now that there are lots, I mean, in Czech
Kratom.
Republic,
Krato. Hmm.
yeah, in Czech Republic, they import, I don't know, 200 tons per year of kratom. So you also see it in different
Oh
varieties,
wow.
like
Okay.
cannabis has different varieties. And like, yeah, also one of the beautiful, beautiful
Mhm.
plant medicines.
Is does that have any cannabinoids in it, or is it a different?
No, it does not have cannabinoids, but it has an effect on endocannabinoid system. And again, it also has different varieties. For example, like some varieties of cannabis that makes you more energetic. With kratom is the same. Some of them make you more energetic. Some of them is for pain. Some of them makes you calm. So, hi, beautiful. Oh,
Raven, if I'm behind the computer for too long,
he
she'll
comes.
just come and she won't let me alone.
Oh,
She's like, time to go out.
yes, yes, yes.
Very cool. Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely look for that
Yeah,
Kratom. I like the
yes.
name.
Yeah, 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 and it's from coffee family, coffee plant family.
All right. Okay. Interesting. All right. Shabnam, what else do we have to discuss tonight?
I think we pretty covered everything that we wanted to talk through.
I think we missed out on PTSD. Did we talk about PTSD?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We wanted to like touch on that, because again, the clinical studies are so controversial when it's come to PTSD and cannabis consume. For
Mhm.
example, a self-report of I don't know, I cannot remember the number of participants, but they were veterans. They reported that their like bad dreams, nightmares reduced significantly after using like cannabis for their PTSD, but not the not the
Yeah.
anxiety attacks per se. But we know that the veterans and the military soldiers in Israel can access to medical cannabis for years now. I don't know what kind of
Mm.
special chemovars or special extract. I don't know what kind of cannabis are they using, especially for PTSD. But I know for a fact that they have access to cannabis, especially, I mean, for PTSD, for many years now. So that was just a point to
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. No, in Israel, I think yes, I think yeah, one of the areas that it's been researched more than other areas in mental health is definitely PTSD. But again, when you look at the data,
yeah,
it's not convincing.
no, no,
And
it's like,
yeah, I don't know what's the story with Israel because they've been using it for quite a few years now.
right.
Um,
And
but
Ali,
we haven't really seen.
I'm sure it's, I mean, because like Israel, they are like super advanced when it's come to like different like chemovars and like a special genetics. I'm sure that is a special kind of a special kind of cannabis chemovar. Um, I have no problem using like cannabis flowers in a moderate dose. I mean sometimes in free time I consume cannabis with my friends, but once one of our he worked in a medical company in Germany, and then he said that yeah we got a new chemovar, and he asked me if I want to try it. And he told me that yeah it's our new chemovar,
Mhm.
it's really good. And I tried, and believe me, he had a vaporizer, so I I only wanted to like try the taste and smell, and I just took one puff, like really one puff, and not like really. I didn't inhale it so deep because I wanted to come back home. Half an hour later, after that, you have no idea. I get such a panic attack. I had the feeling that my heart is coming out of my chest, literally coming out of my chest. I was in metro. Uh, I just wanted to get up. I had the feeling that I'm suffocating. And if something like that can happen to me, which have like no anxiety attack, I can
Yeah,
imagine if a person with anxiety attack background take that kind of like chemovars, that would be fatal to them,
yeah.
psychologically fatal, not like physiologically. But yeah, we have to be so careful when it comes to different, like when it comes to prescribing cannabis chemovars for mental health disease.
Absolutely. I think the dose is very important, and a lot of the side effects and the risks that are associated with cannabis come from high THC chemovars or products.
Right.
Um, that again is a controversial issue because I remember when they were proposing a legalization plan in New Zealand, they wanted to limit it to 15% THC. I think that makes sense if you're selling flowers, dry flowers. Yeah, I think 15%
It's quite a
is
moderate, yeah.
close to what cannabis was naturally. I think because of prohibition, uh, with the black market, when you're growing a drug, producing a drug, you want it to be as potent as possible, so you can, you know, get the most amount of cash for
Yeah,
the plant that you grow. So they keep pushing up the percentage of THC. So I think, if you're consuming dry flower, then go for lower THC flowers. CBD dominant cultivars are best to use. Um, Having said that, in terms of formulation and in the industry, that was one of the points of discussion I was having with the officials here. That if I'm making an oil or formula, nanoparticles, microemulsions, if I'm processing the flowers, it I want it to be as high as possible because 36% THC versus 15%. That means I'm getting twice as much THC from a batch of flower. That will enable me to formulate. I can dilute it further down and
right.
adjust the concentration, but in terms of the industrial yield,
The yield, yeah.
I want to have high potency flowers. But I think if you're using the crude form of the medicine, that's not very good. And a lot of people who've had bad experience with cannabis is on that. These cannabis that you get on the street or from recreational sources are usually very high in THC, and those are not the ones that you want to try. This is one thing that I always tell patients. Remember, the medicinal doses of cannabis are usually about 1,000 times lesser than the recreational dose.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
just,
That's
you know,
true.
you don't need a lot of cannabis to go to sleep, to control your anxiety or depression. Now back to PTSD. So basically, people use PTSD to control the symptoms. There was one study I remember I read a few years ago, that takes us back, I think, to the first or second episode where you were talking about the Italian scientist.
Right.
Um, Rest, eat, sleep, relax, and
Relax,
forget.
forget, protect. Yes, right.
Yeah, and forget and protect. So forget that is the one that is important in PTSD.
Exactly.
And there was a study that shown that if a soldier or a patient who's had a sexual trauma, any sort of physical trauma, if they should start cannabis within 3 days of the trauma. If they do so, they're less likely to have to keep the existing memories. So cannabis helps to forget bad memories, not in a way that you completely forget about it, but it seems that your mind doesn't constantly think about that bad experience, that trauma. It helps you to kind of move along and carry on, that kind of effect. So I think that aspects of cannabis is quite important in PTSD.
Right.
The other studies have also shown that cannabis is helpful with sleep, so taken at bedtime. Although they've seen that THC in particular is helpful to put people to sleep, but those patients usually wake up early in the morning, or at night. So later on, they suggest that they use CBD as well as THC. Higher doses of CBD combined with THC can induce sleep and then maintain sleep for at least 6 to 7 hours. So those was some interesting data, studies, facts that I found about PTSD.
Yeah. I mean, with PTSD, is like they call it amygdala reduction theory because there are lots of like CB1 receptor in amygdala, and basically THC can activate them. And it's interesting that cannabis, like THC, in low doses, can be more helpful for women than men with PTSD because women have more CB1 receptors in their amygdala and man has more in hypothalamus. So that is also a super interesting part that like cannabis when it comes to like depression, anxiety, PTSD could be a better ally for women than men who like suffering from those conditions. And it's just again you see that how complex is our endocannabinoid system because of all the personal tonalities differences from between male and female, and then you introduce a whole complex of chemicals, and yeah, it's like the complexity is just uh, wonderful. Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Anything else, Shabnam?
I think I cannot remember of anything, but yeah, as I said, this is going to be a beautiful ongoing discussion. So whatever we forget to talk about today or tonight, we're gonna do it in next episode.
Absolutely. And look, I think it's also important to re-emphasize that we have our own bias here. We love cannabis.
Right.
We love the science of cannabis. We love the challenges that it throws at us in the lab, in the politics, or in business, like what Shabnam is doing. So yes, we have our own bias, and everybody has to take their own balance decision. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's about finding that middle ground. If you think that cannabis is not for you, then don't do it.
Yes.
Um, if you're in that stage where your body is telling you something about it, or your friend has talked you to take cannabis because you're feeling low, don't take it because of peer pressure. If you decide to take cannabis for medicinal purposes for depression, go talk to a professional, go talk to somebody who knows about it. If you are in a jurisdiction where it is legal, go through the legal channels and, take the benefit of the information, services, and education that there is. Because, there is no doubt that in the wrong hand and in a wrong form, cannabis can be overwhelming. And
Yes.
it can actually, there's heaps of studies on negative side effects of cannabis, which we didn't really discuss here because I think, people have talked about it enough. And we're not hiding that, if you go and take a high dose THC or a dab, and you've never done it before, you're gonna be exposing yourself to even more problems. So take it slow, go slow, go talk to people, ask for help, and try, and it's not something that you have to stick with it. All these things that people say about dependency is really for people who are using it frequently, daily, high recreational doses. As a patient, you will never experience that with the doses that are prescribed. Go try. If it helps your sleep, if you feel your body is getting rest, your mind is getting rest, then that might be something that you want to try. And that kind of brings me to, I think we've gone over time this time, but if you've got a few more minutes, Shabnam, I just wanted to take us back to not really history, but um, a little bit of spirituality around cannabis,
Right.
which is quite interesting to me because it also correlates with the science of cannabis very well. And I wanted to talk about. Do we have time?
Yeah, of course. Of course, for
Sure.
stories always.
I wanted to talk about Lord Shiva. And, for those of you who didn't know, I did my Bachelor of Pharmacy in India. And at the time, all my efforts went into my study, and I was completely blind to all the spiritual, teachings and symbolism. And yeah, I missed out on that part of India. So I'm keen to go back and re-experience it. But Lord Shiva is very famous in Indian mythology. He's regarded as a supreme god. He's basically part of the Hindu Trinity. So in Hindu Trinity, you've got Brahma, who is the creator. You have Vishnu, who is the preserver, and then you have Lord Shiva, who is basically responsible for destruction and creation. Yeah, uh, and it's very interesting concept. So destruction, creation, good and bad. Dark and light. And we have that in where we come from in Persia, in Zoroastrian. It's all about good forces and bad forces and finding the place in between. If the life is pulled between forces of good and bad. It's a polarity concept. So we have to find a place in the middle. Now, Shiva has many roles and forms. You usually see him in the picture as a yogi, meditating, in the mountains of Himalayas. He usually have a snake around his neck and a moon crescent in his hair. And he's also a dancer who performs a divine dance of creation, preservation, and destruction. Now, all of that. Oh, there's one more thing that he's famous for. He's very famous for that third eye chakra. So in the yogi traditions, they talk about the different chakras and the third eye. So Lord Shiva is famous for that. Now, I told that introduction to take you to this story in the Hindu scriptures, where there was a whole pre-story behind this. I'm not gonna go too much into that, but basically, Sage Durvasa, he was a deity that has a lot of rage and dark force. So that kind of spread around the world, and they wanted to do something about it. So people went to Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, and asked him, what should we do? There's all this rage spread around the world. And Vishnu said, if you churn the ocean, you can create the nectar of immortality, and you drink that, and then you become immortal. So then Vishnu declared that all the good forces and bad forces, these being the gods versus the demons, come together to churn the ocean, to basically create this elixir of immortality. And he stood on a mount called Mandra, and he orchestrated this practice. Remember, that mount is quite important. I'll come to that later on. Now they started churning the ocean, and during the practice, a lot of gemstones and incredible things started to come out of the sea. And so the demons got distracted and started, gathering the jewels and the stones, whereas the goddesses were trying to find that elixir. And so that imbalance caused the creation of a poison called hala hala, and that poison was a poison that could just wipe out all the creations, heaven and earth and everything in the middle. So they went to Vishnu, and Vishnu sent them to Shiva and said, Shiva may be able to help you. So they went to Shiva and so this is what we've done, and the poison is going to kill everybody. What should we do? So Shiva went, and basically he took all the poison in his throat, inhaled all the poison. But to save himself, he didn't swallow it down. He held it in his throat, and all his body became blue because of the poison. That's why if you go to India, most Shiva temples or statues are blue in color. It's because he's holding that poison. So he saved the gods and the humanity, the heaven and earth, and he got the name Nilkant. Nila means blue in Sanskrit or Hindi, and Kanta means throat. So he's got blue throat, and that was the name given to him. So then people basically, then the story continues, and he becomes quite sick, and to relieve him, his wife gives him cannabis. That's why to relieve his symptoms, Shiva's wife, Lakshmi, she brings him cannabis, and that's why Shiva is the lord of cannabis. The story is quite interesting because it talks about the forces in the life, the bad forces, the good forces. In that, we have to find that mountain. We have to find that firm ground to stand on, to be able to basically go through that journey of life, and to reach that higher goal. You have to have your foot firm on a firm land. So that's what that mountain presence. And then during the journey, there are all these forces of good and bad. And your example should be the goddesses that just disregard, don't pay attention to the demons who are after the gold and the stones. They continue to go through the journey to get that elixir. In life there's a lot of stresses, distractions, dark forces. You gotta stand firm, disregard them, and continue your journey. And the dark forces are gonna create poison. That poison may be our depression, maybe our stress, anxiety, PTSD, created by others. You gotta stand firm. In some cases, maybe, Vishnu or your doctor, your GP, your friend may recommend that you take cannabis to bring you that balance, to heal you. But at the end of the day, it's a journey that you're going to take, and the plant medicine may help you, but you gotta ignore the bad forces, stand firm, and continue your progress. That was the moral of the story, as I understood, with my heavy bias on cannabis.
Amazing. Super good. So
all right, Shabnam, thank you. I think we had a good, wholesome discussion around this topics, and these are just introductory talks. I think as we go along and we meet people and people approach us, we can, I think, on a topic like PTSD, we can have another episode or a couple of episodes to just dive a bit deeper into it. But I'm already looking forward to our next episode, which is going to be about pain and chronic pain, and we're gonna have a special guest in our next episode. So we'll keep that as a surprise. And yeah, thank you for your time, Shabnam. Thank you everybody who've listened to us, everybody who has subscribed to our YouTube channel as well as Spotify. We're getting a lot of messages and words of appreciation. So thank you, and I hope that through these discussions we bring a little bit more awareness to this area of research and science. Thank you very much, Shabnam.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. Super interesting discussion today, and I'm very much looking forward to discuss chronic pain and pain in next episode, because at the beginning we said that most of these conditions or diseases are comorbid, and many people with depression develop chronic pain, and many people with chronic pain have depression. So they are so close together. They go hand in hand, these two symptoms. Very much looking forward to the next episode. And if you have questions, please send us questions. We would love to go deeper in your concerns, in the questions that you might have, if you are new to cannabis, if you want to try it, or any other topic that you find interesting.
Awesome. Thank you very much, my friend. See you in the next episode, everybody.
Bye bye.
مرسی شبنم.
خواهش میکنم. خیلی ببین داستانه چه بامزه بود. من نمیدونستم شیوا برای چی آبیه.